Hi, everyone. Welcome back to season three of the Creative Mountain Mama podcast. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by none other than Kelsey Stanton, better known as That Based Mom. She talks about motherhood, homeschooling, and a passionate believer in raising strong families. She shares her values, embraces traditional living, and isn't afraid to challenge modern narratives. Today, we're diving into her journey and what she stands for: faith, family, and freedom. Kelsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I am excited for our conversation because I love your content. I'm a personal fan. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you making the time to be on here. Have you always had the same convictions about motherhood, or was there a turning point in your journey?
No, so I started my motherhood journey very typical, standard mom life. When my son was 2, he was diagnosed with autism, and that really changed our whole livelihood, our entire trajectory, especially how I am as a mom and the decisions that I make for my family. And yeah, so that was about 8 years ago. And since then, every day I make a decision that will continue our journey forward to live a more holistic and non-toxic lifestyle. But yeah, everything pretty much changed as soon as I heard those words that he was diagnosed.
What were some of the first steps that you took to change what you were doing before?
Definitely diet was the first thing. I had already somewhat been kind of crunchy, I guess. I was aware of like parabens in our skincare and, we use fluoride, things like that. Like I was very aware of those things, but it wasn't until I realized, the dangers of vaccines and, about how a lot of our food has like these harmful chemicals in them. And I really hadn't thought about that beyond, don't get them a lot of sugar or things like that. So we took out gluten and conventional dairy and sugar, and then later learned about seed oils. So started with diet and then slowly kind of stepped further back away from like your typical medical decisions for what most people do for their children. And so I just kind of had to take a bird's eye view from all of the things that we were doing in our life and what could be potentially causing, any sort of neurodiversity in our children. And so went down lots of rabbit holes, but definitely started with diet because that was like the easiest thing to get started with.
I heard a quote that said, your food is slowly healing you, or it's slowly making you unhealthy. And I thought
Yes.
that was really good.
Yeah, I love that.
And this definitely has a lot to do with the modern administration, our new administration, and what RFK Jr. is doing to bring awareness to these types of things.
Yeah.
What does your diet look like now? Are you cooking at home, and where are you sourcing your food?
Yeah, everything, I would say 95% of our food is made at home.
Cool.
And even going as far as freshly milling our own wheat.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's like my favorite thing is I actually started a bakery because so many local families are like, we want freshly milled flour. So, bought my mill like a year and a half ago and just went on that whole journey of freshly milling our own flour. We actually were gluten free for about 8 years and reintroduced the freshly milled flour, and it has been such a blessing because we can now tolerate gluten again,
Wow.
which is amazing, right? When you have the whole part of the wheat berry, you're able to tolerate it. But so we make everything at home. There's the rare occurrence where I'm like, can you pick up, like Five Guys is our like a go-to
Oh my
fast
gosh,
food.
it's so expensive, but it's so good.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the only one that doesn't use seed oils. And so we're like, okay, that's the one we'll get. But most everything is made at home, which thankfully I'm at home all the time and I'm able to make everything. Um, that have not always been like that. I'd say in the last year and a half, definitely like, okay, everything is at home. Um, but I still we buy our meat from farms, and we buy raw milk from a local farm as well. And thankfully, we have chickens, so we're able to have our own eggs. And yeah, so everything that I can make at home, I do.
Amazing. So you said milk from a raw dairy farm. Do you
Hmm.
heat it up?
Not a lot. No.
Okay.
So, I try to keep it. So I've lived my whole life lactose intolerant and unable to eat dairy at all. And, I just would tell people I'm allergic to dairy because it was so severe. And then I had somebody recommend raw dairy because when you have the enzymes that are necessary for you and able to actually digest it, same thing with the wheat, that a lot of people don't have problems with it. And so I just tried it, kind of dipped my toes in and have had no issues. And so when it is heated, it does remove those enzymes and that bacteria that is necessary for you to be able to digest it. So I do a little bit, like if I'm making like tea or coffee, if it's not too hot, I'll put that in there.
Okay. I always wondered, like, could you just drink raw milk all the time? If you heated it a little bit, does that kill the bacteria? I've always meant to look that up.
I think it's to a certain temperature. I think it's like 120 degrees or something like that.
Oh.
Maybe, yeah, maybe less. But you don't want to heat it up too much because then it technically pasteurizes it.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is, which kills the enzymes that you need to
Yeah,
digest.
right.
Have you guys done ice cream? Raw milk ice cream?
Yes, love it.
Yay.
And like yolks from our chickens, and it uses a lot of cream to make the ice cream. So it's rare because we have to make sure we have like enough of the cream, but it is special and it's so so good.
You stockpile your cream.
Yeah.
And then for people that don't have access to milling their own wheat, I know there's some crazy things about bread flour. What
Yeah.
brand would you recommend that doesn't have all the craziness?
Um so the thing with
Yeah.
flour is when you are purchasing it, even if it's freshly milled, if it's beyond like 24 hours old, it has basically lost all of its nutritional value. So
Wow.
if you're purchasing flour from like the shelf, even if it's like organic bread flour from Costco or wherever, it has been stripped of all the endosperm and the wheat germs. So you no longer have the nutritional benefits of the wheat. So that is the best part about the freshly milled flour is that it when it's freshly milled, you're actually getting all of that nutrition from the wheat. So I I guess if you have to buy wheat, flour, buy the organic, but it won't necessarily have any nutritional value. It's essentially dead. It's just an empty carb, basically.
Let me get this straight. We've stripped our milk of the enzymes that help you digest the milk, and we stripped our flour of the wheat germ that helps you get the
Digest.
nourishment you need from the carb.
Yes, right.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Go figure.
It's like too sanitary, right? To then mass produce things and keep it shelf stable. You've
Right.
removed then the nutritive value for your body actually benefits from.
Yeah, and if you go kind of down the rabbit hole of raw milk and why pasteurization began, and then with the wheat, so um, what is her name? Sue Becker. She is the whole pioneer of freshly milled flour right now, and she describes that in times past, the cities would be centralized around the mill because people wanted access to fresh milled flour. Now, when they wanted to bring flour to the stores, they would then strip the germ and the endosperm because those are the fatty parts of the wheat berry. And so by removing that, it makes it more shelf stable. So they essentially made the mills obsolete, which is why you see like giant mills like empty now. But so in order for the masses to have access to flour and have it more shelf stable, they would strip those parts off of it. So it makes it more available, but not nutritious at all.
And I mean, our local mill got turned into a restaurant, ironically, serving food to the masses.
Yes, right. Like,
That is stripped of their nutrient value. So
yeah.
if you are a conscious mama, let's say you are dealing with some dietary issues or you don't want to be, do you have more of a, I'm sure it's more expensive, but what other choices could you be making? What other rabbit holes have you gone down?
Oh gosh, all of them, I feel like. Well, there's always more. Um, yeah, definitely starting with dairy and with wheat. I think that a good one is different types of sugar too, because I don't necessarily think that sugar is bad. It's more about like how it was processed and how our body reacts to it as well. So, especially for my son who has autism, it gets extremely hyperactive with cane sugar. It just does not sit right with his body, even organic, like raw, all the things. So we started baking with coconut sugar, and because it's like the way that they process it on site, it's much healthier. And then obviously honey, raw honey. Um, so sugar, that's going to be the like lowest glycemic index, but is the least processed basically. So coming down to again with the freshly milled flour and the raw milk, like how close to the source is that food? And so that one is a big one that we swapped out. We didn't do sugar at all for a long time, and reintroduced the coconut sugar and honey, and have had no issues with that too.
And then are you then taking those and like, I'm assuming baking with them and then making your own treats and your own like sweet moments, sweet memories, what childhood is based off of, right? But you're
Yeah.
using just a less processed sugar.
Yes, yeah. And for the years that we weren't doing sugar, we did like monk fruit. But then I realized that a lot of monk fruit sweeteners are cut with erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol and can cause lots of gut issues as well, because it is processed. And so by returning back to, yeah, like coconut sugar or the honey, I would say is probably the best, but I don't like to bake all the time with honey. So as close to the source for, yeah, sweet. We make cookies. I make like like little chocolate bars and all kinds of sweet treats, but um I wouldn't like say because it's organic sugar it's necessarily healthy personally.
Because it's been so refined.
Yeah, right. And it does have a high glycemic index. So we know sugar, like we've been told sugar is not good for us, but why is that? Why do we want to avoid it if if it's a natural occurring, sweetener? But I think there are ones that are a lot more healthy for us than cane sugar.
And that has everything to do with how your body is processing it. It
Right.
tastes great going down, right? And then in the background, what's your body doing with it? So it sounds like a lower glycemic index is the answer.
Right.
Well,
Yes. Yeah.
I was at a play date and there was being served some snacks for kids that my kid had never had.
Yeah.
And one of the moms, just knowing who I am, goes, how about that red dye 40? And I said, I know I'm sweating underneath my armpits right now. What do I do? What do you do to push back against the cultural pressure?
So, um, I have two other children as well. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they are neurotypical. And thankfully, my 7-year-old is really educated on foods that are not great for him. But sometimes he's like, "Oh, can I please, mommy?" So, I do say like on special occasions, like at birthday parties, if there's a cake that's like from the store and it's got dyes in it, okay, once every few months is not a big deal. But if he's at like an event that's like not a really big deal and there's like pizza and candy and like he said that one time there was those cheese balls and he was just like, oh, I don't eat that. Thankfully he's very educated on that. But thankfully, I actually bring a lot of my own snacks when we go out places. I know that there's going to be temptation. Um, and so like better options than what they may have. So like the Yum Earth candies are really good because they're dye free. Or there's one, it's Smart Sweets that have like conventional candies turned into like they're not perfect ingredients, but they're at least like candy. So for like, um, if they get like a baggie from a piñata, I swap it out for the Smart Sweets. So that kind of thing. So I try not to make a big deal out of it, but it's like my kids thankfully have known now, like, okay, we don't usually eat that. So either they'll ask me or I'll just swap it out. Um, I try not to make a big deal out of it, but
Yeah.
like if we go to my in-laws, for example, and they've made food with seed oils in it. I'm not a fan, and so I'll say, you know, we'll eat something a little bit later or something like that, or I'll make my own food and have it separate for them, and I'll offer it to everybody. But um, you know, it's good to have um your own convictions, but not make people feel bad for, you know, offering food to our kids. And it's a balance for sure.
Yeah, it's not a slippery slope. But it's like you gotta be grace filled.
Yes, right. Yes. And it's hard
And you
because,
gotta
you know,
bring your
you've
own
done so
snacks.
much work. Right. Yes. And bring your own snacks. Um, and yeah, it's good to educate your kids too, because you're not always going to be with them, or they might be feeling pressure from other kids. It's like drugs, you know, food dyes are the new drugs. It's like on the playground, they're like, hey, I got these candies. And it's like, okay. Thankfully, they know that they're not supposed to eat that kind of food. So, and yeah, just bringing your own, having yourself armed with good options.
And you and I spoke a little bit about, there is a deteriorating trust in these systems. How did we get here in the first place? Really makes you raise an eyebrow at the entire, institution of food. We call it big food or big
Right.
soap.
Yeah. Right.
That's what big
Yeah.
food wants you to think.
Yeah.
So, what are some other ways? I know you homeschool. What are some other ways that you're approaching a self-sufficient lifestyle?
We made a concerted effort to get out of the city. And so we actually moved to the country about 2.5 years ago. And so actually just removing ourselves from like the hustle and bustle in the city and just choosing a more slow paced, peaceful lifestyle. And so with that came the option to have our own animals. So we have chickens and potentially other livestock if we want some, growing our own food. So we actually had a garden when we lived in the city. We were those people with the garden boxes in our front yard, and whether they liked it or not, that was just a really big priority for us. So growing our own food and learning how to be as self-sustaining as possible with our food. And actually a huge goal of mine is to like grow my own wheat. Like that's that would
Yeah.
be like the pinnacle for us. But just being able to know exactly where food is sourced and how it was grown, and no questions about whether it has like a APO coating on it, or if it's been injected with mRNA or whatever, if it's actually organic. So having it at home is like number one. And then learning how to can and preserve our food was next, because, you know, even with gardening, we had this huge bounty. We had like all these zucchinis and all these tomatoes and all these things. What do we do with all this food? And so we learned how to preserve our food via canning and dehydrating. And hopefully this year we'll get a freeze dryer. So to freeze dry our foods. So being able to save the food and make it shelf stable beyond when we're harvesting. And that was a big lesson for us when we had all this food. What do we do with it all? And then the next thing would be to learn how to save for like long storage. So rice and beans and things like that you can put into Mylar bags and save for long-term storage, and put into 5-gallon buckets with the gamma lids, that sort of thing. Long-term storage was really big for us too. So we have kind of like a tier system of a food storage based on like immediate, like a few months, and then like 30 years. So I think food is number one, and then just being able to source whatever you can yourself is big. But yeah, so that I think food, and then water. Obviously, water storage is big for us. Learning how to save. We live in Oregon, so lots of water to save. So figuring out how we can save that for long term as well. So uh, yeah, next step would be more livestock and learning how to freeze dry foods because that would be amazing.
Yeah, I've looked into those freeze dryers. They are a pretty penny, but
Well,
anyone
they
that
have
I've
one at
talked,
Costco right now, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I don't know.
yeah, you get that cashback reward at the end of the year.
Yeah, right.
What is the cost and how are you sourcing your beans and rice for long-term storage?
Azure Standard is where I get anything like bulk. So we get all of our wheat. We get organic wheat berries from Azure. Yeah, rice, beans, anything like that that you want to buy in bulk. And actually, I will say if you are buying like organic flour, and you don't want to freshly mill, you can just get it from Azure. I love everything that they have. It's all super high quality, and I can trust everything that comes from them. They even have like dried fruits and things like that too. So if you're not ready to dehydrate your own food, Azure Standard is where I get everything bulk. Love it.
Do you have a discount code?
I do have a code. It does not have a discount though. So, yeah, I wish they would give that. But and what's cool is once you sign up, then you have a code to give to people too. So that's cool. Uh, but the thing with Azure is I know it can be tricky because I was worried about this for a long time, which is why I didn't sign up sooner, is the whole drop scenario, is finding one near you for pickups. Ours is once a month. It's 35 minutes away. Everything from us is 35 minutes. So not a big deal. You meet up at a certain time, help unload the truck, and you load your car back up. So it is a lot easier if you are like a stay-at-home mom or if you're able to coordinate your schedule around the drops. And so that's kind of where it gets a little tricky, but it's totally worth it because it is a lot cheaper.
And it's I mean, my personal dream is to have our storage room downstairs just filled with like a 30, what'd you say, 30, 10, and 5 and immediate
Yep.
food?
Yep.
How long does it take to stockpile through that company? I guess it's as much as you want to spend, right?
Right, yeah. So they have like different options like 5 pound, 10 pound, 25 pound, 50 pound. Um, and because I have my bakery now, I do like the 50 pound bags of wheat and that lasts a while. But since it is once a month, I try to get as much as I can so I'm not like, fear ordering off of Amazon or whatever. So yeah.
I've been there. I've filled my cart with some fear order, like seeds. Like
Yes. Yeah.
my
Oh my
husband's
gosh,
like,
the
I
seeds.
think that is a gimmick. Don't buy that.
Yeah, I know. It's like those heirloom seed packs that are like 30 different types of seeds. Those are actually great for like, yeah, if you want like a long-term storage of seeds, but
I bought them. They're in my
yeah.
greenhouse right now,
Yeah.
actually. Just
Great.
I went down from the 150 survival seed pack to like the cold water, cold hardy veggies.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Well, and you're in a colder temperate, so that makes sense. But yeah, it's good you have a greenhouse. That we finally got a greenhouse this year, and that has been very game changing. I'm really excited to have that as an option for like when it's the winter time, but also when the seedlings are not quite ready to go out in the garden, but I don't want them on my countertop anymore. So
Yeah, absolutely. We did a heater in ours. I don't recommend this. We
smart.
used
Yeah.
all
Oh,
our
okay. No.
electricity all winter long. We have the cheapest electricity in the country. I don't know how we did that, but if you were to find like a solar solution
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a battery pack that you can, recharge or something better than
Okay.
just plugging in a heater,
Yeah.
huge. I mean,
Okay.
all of our plants were annuals and
Yeah.
we kept them for another year. So
Nice. Okay. So no heater. I have thought about getting the heating lamps. No? Do you think that would be too much?
I would love to hear your
Okay.
experience if you
I'll
do it.
try
It
it.
might
I'll try
dry
it.
them out is the only thing. I
Oh,
went in
yeah.
and watered weekly
Hmm.
still, but I just feel like the heat and, it's blowing hot air on it. I wonder if
Yeah.
the heat lamp would be better or more drying. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Okay. I'll let you know.
I would assume you could do like a chicken heating lamp,
Oh,
same
yeah.
as you do with your
Right.
chickens.
Yeah. Super cheap too.
So all of this takes time. I know you're a stay-at-home mom. We talked a little
Mhm.
bit about modern feminism.
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah. So up until actually 7 years ago, I was still working a 9 to 5, and I was pregnant with my second child. And I actually lost my job when I was 7 months pregnant. And it was very earth shaking for us because I was very much like, I need to work, I need to provide for my family. And, my husband was a breadwinner, but it was nice to have the two incomes. But then once we realized how much money would have gone to two daycares, and I think it was going to net like $400 a month or something like that. So totally not worth schlepping my kids off at daycare every day. I missed out on the first 3.5 years of my child's life. And I felt like, okay, this is my opportunity. God is showing me you can stay home. You can be home with your children. You just have to get creative. It's just going to take some, working out to figure out how this is going to work for you guys. So I actually started an Etsy shop when that happened. I crochet like little baby outfits, and that was a nice little boost of income for us. And since I was just like sitting around nursing a newborn all day long, that was a nice way to make an income. And then over the years, I've just kind of like found other ways to make income. So like affiliate links and network marketing, and now I have my bakery. And there's ways to be home with your children. And after, I think growing up in the 90s, you're told you have to like get a high power career. You're so smart. Like, why would you waste that on raising a family? And I never had that installed into my, like, even my, nowhere in my life was raising a family a priority for me because, my mom worked and my grandma worked. And so it was just always like have children and just like send them off to daycare and then they'll go to school. And I realized that when I had my first child, that that's not what I wanted, but I was so like involved in the system. And so I think just like deciding to break free from it really helped me just like, we can do this. Like I can stay home with my kids. And so as I've gotten older, I just kind of realized like it makes me sad that there's so many moms that think that they have to work because that's what society says that they have to do. And if you want to work, that's great. Like obviously there's certain circumstances, like if you're a single mom or whatever, but um, just because you were told your whole life you have to work in order to be valuable, that's not true. Like raising a family, raising up the next generation of people is the Lord's work in my eyes. And I feel like I have been like I was like pushed into it, like you got to do this. And then my son was diagnosed, and it was like I cannot be away from him anymore. Like I have to be home. So in looking into modern feminism, like again, like you're not valuable if you're not like climbing the corporate ladder. You're not valuable if you know, want to stay home with your kids and homeschool them and disciple them. And it makes me really sad. And on my content, I try to share it in a graceful way, like in a loving way, that you don't have to live this certain way because that's what the society has told you. If you want to be home with your kids, there is a way. You can figure it out. And how you do that, I don't know, but you got to get creative and figure it out and use the skills that God gave you to, raise your babies and find a way to make an income or not if you are able to do that too.
Yeah. And here's what I've been battling with. Is it that World War II, the men went off, the women got into those roles, they came back, right? Those roles have been filled, and it's kind of been a two-income society ever since then.
Yeah.
Is that the ploy, or is it really putting women into college, into a career, into all of their baby making years are spent
Hmm.
in the workforce working for someone else? And then, right, we have um, this separation between women that choose to pursue their families or women that choose to pursue a career. Is it the narrative, or is it just the two income impossibility to have life off of a single income? I don't know.
Well, I think it's both. I think also, so yes, I think starting in the 50s, yeah, men came back and women were like, well, I have a job. Like, I don't need to be home and raise children. And I have value outside of the home, which is true. But I think that the values changed. That was when there's a hard line. And then it continued to go further where, yes, go to college, get a degree, have like all these crazy student loans that you'll never be able to pay off. So you have to continue to work. And I think it just continued to get further and further where now like 38-year-old women are like, oh my gosh, I want to have a child and it's probably too late, or I have to try really hard to get pregnant. And they've worked so hard to grow this career that they feel guilty to step away from. Like it really is so sad to me. And so I think it's a combination of the two. Like our society very much is like, you're valuable if you have a high paying job and you've worked really hard for it, and your kids can go to school and be taught by the system and continue the cycle. But also, if people lean on like it's too expensive to live on one income, which I understand, you know, our finances aren't perfect, but you get scrappy. You figure out like you mill your own wheat. Like you find ways. We stop buying like packaged foods. Like anything that comes in a bag is a
Right.
luxury. And honestly, it's probably not better for you anyway. So we don't go out to eat. We don't really travel that much. Like we make sacrifices so that I can be home with my kids. It would be like it would have to take a very huge impact on our finances for me to have to go back to work. Um, yeah, and send my kids to school.
So not only are you getting more time to do these things,
Yeah.
but they are things worth doing. Milling your own wheat, I don't care who you are, making bread from a starter or just from scratch, that
Mhm.
is such a good time. My husband will
Yeah.
get home and I've started a new venture like making soap. And
Yeah.
that's what I've done all day.
I
I'm
love it.
so happy.
Yes.
The house is
Right.
so messy. I learned a new skill. So
The
there's
laundry
that.
will get done. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it's like my house is it looks like a bomb went off, but at least I made a loaf of bread.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, in the 1800s, we have more time because laundry didn't take like 8 hours. It was a full 7 day cycle. It was like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Yeah.
Thursday, you get Friday and Saturday off, and then you start again on Sunday. And
Yeah.
it was a lifestyle for a
Yes.
lot of the things that we have the ability to delegate now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually have a book, and it's like the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and it was like, yeah, Sunday is day of rest, Monday is laundry, Tuesday is baking, Wednesday is mending clothes. Like there's like you said, a 7 day cycle, and people go through it. And I think like recently started prioritizing reading because I haven't read a book in forever for just pleasure. I had always read like informational books about autism or about diets or whatever. Now I want to start reading fiction, and I had to carve out time for that. So that meant like less time on social media. Go figure. Or while I'm waiting for my bread to rise, I can do that. Or if the toddler is occupied, I'll sit down and read. So there is time. You just have to kind of prioritize what you want to get done.
Absolutely. And there is time also, I wanted to make this point, to have a career. I think the narrative doesn't need to be necessarily
Mm,
thrown out, but you could focus like, hey, I'm 19 when my body can recover from having kids the best. Let's start a family
yeah.
and let's start careers. Let's normalize careers starting at 30 because who has ever
Yeah.
walked into a job at 20 years old and had respect of anyone in that office? You're
Right.
young, you're a girl, you're just, out of college and no one's going to give you the time of day and you get everyone else's busy work. So why not
Yeah.
start when you're 30 and 40 and 50? And then
Yeah.
you do have a voice in that office and you do have
Yeah.
some wisdom and grit from raising kids since you were 19 and
Right.
balancing all of that. And now you have something awesome. You always had something awesome to offer, but you're seen as, being more valuable in an office setting anyway.
I love that. That's a great idea. Yeah. Normalize getting out of college and then having a family. And then you can use your degree when your children are older. I
Yes.
love that.
Yes. Pay off your debt, right?
Yeah.
Don't get into debt at all. And then
I
when you're
mean, yeah.
older, you're just putting that money away or you're just putting that money into retirement, because your kids are out of the house and now you're working. Or
Right.
now you've started a company and now your bakery's taken off and you have 4 or 5 locations. Your kids are out of the house and you're able to, you know, build that company that you started.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the bakery thing is new, but it has been so exciting because it's actually something that people have wanted and needed, and I feel like I fulfill that like itch as a '90s kid to have an income and some way to help support our family financially, but not having my face in my phone and feeling very like disconnected from my daily life where it's integrated into our life. I'm already making bread, so I might as well make more bread for my neighbors. So that's been really fun. And I can see it growing and I can see it turning into something big or not. I mean, whatever I want it to be. But it's possible to make income while you're home with your kids and it does not have to be either or.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you started baking bread inside, I don't know, for your family in your home. And
Yeah.
then it branched out to your community. Is there a lot of word of mouth and how else do you market?
So it started out, I actually just made like a Facebook page and posted to my local marketplace, and people started ordering that way. And then, yeah, word of mouth. And then now I have a little stand at my raw milk lady's house. And so that has been really cool. So yeah, lots of word of mouth, but also just kind of posting into like the different communities. And next door is one that I used. Um, I'm going to start doing some farmers markets this year. So now that my 3-year-old is not attached to me all the time, I can go and do that. So that's exciting. And so just really organic, but um, thankfully for technology, I'm able to use that too.
Huge. Getting
Yeah.
you the ability to be at home with your little ones and reach people from all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are looking into possibly doing like a separate kitchen that is USDA inspected. So I'll be able to work with, so here in Oregon, we can only, if you're a cottage bakery, you cannot work with USDA inspected locations like a coffee shop or things like that. So in order to kind of go to the next level of working with wholesale accounts, I would have to have a separate kitchen. So looking into ways to doing that, like putting maybe a separate area in our shop or something like that. So still on property and still like I'm home with my kids, but able to scale to kind of a larger option.
I would definitely say for any listeners to look up your state's cottage laws.
Yes.
For example, in Colorado, we cannot sell sourdough starter that has not been prepared in a commercial kitchen. And
Okay.
then the homeschooling piece too. Look up your local state's homeschooling rules. Some
Yep.
states have none, some states you have to register, you know, that kind of thing.
Yep. Definitely before you do anything like that, because thankfully Oregon is very flexible on a lot of things. Not everything, but a lot of things like that. So with the cottage bakery, yeah, you can only make a certain amount of money from it. And then with homeschooling, it's very flexible. You don't have to report. There's testing here and there, but it's very, very flexible.
What
So
kind of numbers do you have to report for the cottage bakery side? Or did you say a limit?
yeah, so you can't make more than $50,000 per year from your cottage bakery. So that's very, it's a lot. So, considering what that would take to make that much money. So,
I was
yeah.
just going to make this point because my ancestors came over from Missouri to Colorado on wagon, frontier,
Oh, yes.
stopped at the mountains because it's a pretty big barrier. Didn't go
Yes.
on to Oregon, but you have this rise of bureaucracy. And I think it's kind of being done with a sledgehammer, but I think that's what I'm most excited about this administration is we didn't have to have laws for opening up a bakery 50
Right.
years ago. We didn't
Right.
have laws about we had laws about schooling your children, but the amount of bureaucracy for the everyday individual that's just being entrepreneurial, just opening a
Yeah.
business, or
Right.
it
Like
is
I'm paying taxes
250
and
years.
yeah, right. I know. Yeah, it is really frustrating. So I'm like, oh, it's so flexible, but then like all these rules.
Think of
Yeah.
250 years of people making a bad choice, and then a law was established, and then making another bad choice. Well, we never thought that was going to happen. So another law is established, and we are kind of, you get to look back and be like, man, we are saddled with rules and regulation. It's just, do your best. Definitely
Well,
research it.
yeah, and I definitely think that there obviously is like a deeper agenda with everything. So, how can we continue to squeeze the every person from being able to be entrepreneurs, from being able to educate their children? So, how can we make it as difficult as possible to do these things? And so that they can be part of the system to be, worker bees and go out and work, earn their salary and, waste their entire life working. And then retire when they're 65 and finally, hopefully be able to enjoy the rest of their life. So I think that there's a deeper agenda for sure, but, like you said, like decisions over time have been like, dang it, why did we do that? Why did we let that freedom go? And now we live a totally different life than we did 250 years ago.
Absolutely. And I know my personal goal is to be, out of the city, more self-sufficient, grow my garden. That can't happen without having an awareness of what you can and cannot do. And we live even in an HOA, so there's six
Oh,
levels of
yeah.
bureaucracy from the HOA all the way up to the federal government. And we have to be constantly aware. And honestly, my husband and I attend those meetings and we have to battle for every single decision.
Oh
Dude,
my
let's
gosh.
cut the rules, let's cut the
People in
regulation.
HOAs, I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yeah, even when we lived in the city, thankfully we were not in an HOA. We were like in this little annex of an older neighborhood around HOA's neighborhoods. And so that's how we got away with having like the front yard garden boxes. And we were allowed to have 4 chickens, no roosters, but there were limits, but you were able to kind of do your own thing. And this is a more liberal area. So it does go towards like, gardening and having chickens and that sort of thing. And so thankfully that was the case. But people who live in HOAs, my heart goes to you because I'm very much like I do what I want. And so that would not work for me.
Yeah, and the point has been raised over and over again is you moved here, you signed the covenants, and our pushback is, yeah, but we are part of these community members and we have the ability and we actually do have the power to change. So
Yeah.
let's take that, not
Yeah,
just
as
be
long as
lazy and say this is the way it's always been.
right. Yeah. Can we fight together to make it better for all of us?
And I appreciate what you said about like there's definitely a hidden agenda. And I do want to speak to, I think that's the agenda of the enemy, right? Is
Right.
creating these strongholds in our lives. And our fight is not against physical powers, but the powers of institutions and the unseen spiritual forces. So
Yep.
I think a lot of our battles are done with prayer. They're done with the silent moments. They're done with turning to your Bible in the early mornings and having that be the first thing you look at on your phone. What ways does faith impact your family and your day-to-day life?
So yeah, definitely starting my day with my Bible, either physical or on my phone. I try physical, but if I can, then if I can't, I'll squeeze it in on my phone. But prioritizing that. And instead, I used to be very like, what can I do to better my life instead of how can I turn to the Lord and how can I give him this situation, especially around unfortunate situations in our life, like my son having autism or like uh, losing jobs or things like that have come in our lives that what did I do? How can I fix this instead of how can I turn to the Lord and how can I give this moment to him? And the more I have done that, the better things have happened to our lives. And I'm not saying like that happens for everything, but if it's part of his plan and we try to follow as much of that as we can. And so actually moving to the country was a huge leap of faith for us because we were very comfortable living in the city, but we just he gave us this huge opportunity and we just jumped for it. And I'm very like I try to be faithful to the Holy Spirit and however I can in my daily life, and acting on that and staying faithful to that. Because if I miss an opportunity, and I feel like I have in the past, then I always regret it, and it has had negative impacts on our life. So just staying faithful day in, day out, even on what we're making for dinner, like how am I being led by the Holy Spirit to live closer to him, to be more obedient, and just understand that his plan is much stronger than mine. And I'm a control freak. So it's a journey of really learning to let go of that. So just staying in constant prayer, staying in, trying to remove myself from being in a state of worry or stress, and giving that to him. And that's been the biggest in the last year. That has been the biggest lesson for me, is to just hand it to him, and trust his plan for me and for my family.
So good. And when you put down your agenda and pick up the cross, it's
Yes.
not an easy thing to do, but somehow his yoke is light, his burden is light, and
Yeah.
burden is light, and the yoke is there, something or other,
Yeah.
like Bible verse.
Yeah.
But
Don't quiz me.
somehow, yeah, work with me here. I think that and goes has a lot to do with our conversation around modern feminism is you
Mm.
don't pick up that cross of continuing on your family or don't pick up the burden of nursing that baby at 2 a.m. and every 2 hours, for a lot of months. But you're looking at this life as like, how can it be the easiest, most self-focused, most
Right.
self-fulfilling, right?
Yes.
Least stressful. And then if you're really led by the Holy Spirit, right, you're asked to pick up your cross. You're asked to face turmoil. And honestly, in this social media space, a lot of pushback and a lot
Yeah.
of even fellow Christians saying,
Yes.
these things that, Jesus got obviously nailed to the cross. He was always persecuted by the Pharisees. These are the leaders in the religious institutions.
Mhm.
If we're looking to Jesus to lead our lives, it's not free from despair and discouragement and, hard things being said to us and hard days being thrown at us, but you still choose to lay down yourself and pick up that cross. I think
Yeah,
that's the best way.
with social media, that has been, so I actually, about 2 years ago, I had a large account, and I deleted it. And because the Holy Spirit said, my children were all over my social media. And that was probably the biggest leap I've ever made, because I had grown this account, and I was very much in my flesh and my ego about this, because I didn't want to delete it. But he was saying, you need to get your kids off social media. And that was something that was very difficult, but I deleted it, and it felt like this huge weight was lifted off of me. And I took a break for a while, and then started my new account. And I had full faith that if this was meant for me, and if this was God's journey for me, that it would be successful. And thankfully it grew really quickly, and I felt really vindicted to share my values and my views, whether that was going to bring me persecution or if it was going to bring me criticism, because, you know, obviously living a alternative lifestyle is going to bring persecution and criticism. But I I knew that the Lord wanted me to spread the word about our experience and our knowledge about things, in our world, that are part of the agenda, and that are part of why we are where we are now, as far as, big food, big pharma, um, feminism, and all the things. And so by speaking out about it, it has brought me a lot of eyes. And whether that is, critical or in praise, it doesn't matter to me. It's in service to God. And I felt like, um, if I was meant to do this, it would do well. And so thankfully, it has been very exciting and fun, but definitely not without criticism. I get some of the meanest messages and comments, and I just know that God's got my back, so it's fine. But it's been a journey.
What's the point of salt if it loses its saltiness? And I really feel if you step back from being owned by a corporation, you have the freedom then to speak what's on your spirit and on your mind. And it's so much more mentally healthy to be in that place where you can say, I don't, I'm not here to please man, right?
Yeah.
I'm here to speak out against these things because they're huge for a reason and they're super controlling because a lot of people just kind of have to bend to it because their boss might say something
Yep.
or,
Someone's
they
gonna
can,
find it.
yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
it has created polarization in my family, if I'm honest. It's I'm a lot different than the rest of my family, and so things can be misconstrued, and that's okay. It's just we're fine. But it's taken a lot of faith to understand that, like, okay, sharing my views is not the end of the world. And it will help. It does empower people. It does help people want to live more independently and self-sufficiently and walk away from the typical pharma big food lifestyle. And that's why I keep going, because otherwise I'm just like, that's what I know I'm here to do. I know I'm here to help people wake up and see what is going on around them, and one rabbit hole at a time.
And for
Yeah.
our listeners that are, 25 and under,
Mhm.
what is one thing you'd say to a young woman that's struggling with embracing biblical womanhood?
So if you were not told that it's okay to want to be a stay-at-home mom, it's okay to be a stay-at-home mom. It's okay to want to have a masculine husband who works and provides for your family. And it's okay to not want to work for a corporation, climb the corporate ladder, and then have children when you're 38, 35 plus. You are allowed to do that. You are allowed to want that in your life. And so being strong in your faith is huge. My journey with Jesus has not, I refound my faith in the last 10 years. And so, if I had my faith earlier, gosh, my life, it looked so much different, but it's okay. It's all part of his plan. But, be strong in your faith and your convictions, and find a man who is also very in tune with the Lord and has a strong faith, because that will do everything. My husband is the most amazing, faithful man. So, um, finding a man, so whether that's through a church or communities or however you find them, but um, have that as a tenet and have that something that is important to you, because having a faithful husband and you having a strong faith and connection with the Lord is so important. I wish I had that for sure when I was younger. Um, so that would be not. It is okay to be a stay-at-home mom and to want that for your life. And like you said, when you're like older and your kids are older, you're able to pursue your own whatever you want to do. So whether that's having a bakery or you want to get a job when you're 30, go ahead. Like, but have the babies, raise them, and don't feel like you need to apologize or be ashamed of wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. It's the biggest blessing.
I mean, if you think about that, if you have kids, let's say when you're 20,
Mhm.
you raise them until you're 38. At 18, they go on into their own blessed, beautiful lives, whether that's to
Mhm.
college or to trade. And at 38, you're applying, and, 39, 40, you're at a job full time and they're off at school or whatever. And then you have the income, that second income to then pay for family vacations and, pay for whatever you couldn't pay for the last 18 years.
Yeah.
I wish that was spoken to more.
Yeah, and it's okay to struggle a little bit more financially when you're raising babies, because there will be blessings later in life when they're older. Like you said, you can go work or do whatever you want, but it's okay to have like the times of hardship when they're little, because it doesn't feel like that though when you're raising them and you're making everything from home and you have, like you said, the time to really focus on what makes you excited, what is makes you passionate. Um, and yeah, I think if you start at 20, that's amazing. I had my first when I was 26 and um it felt young, but I wish I'd started earlier.
Yeah, and you don't know what you want to do when you're 20. I was traveling all around and trying
No,
to
oh my
figure out
gosh.
what do I want to do. So why waste that time when you're young,
Yeah.
when your body's the most able to recover?
Yes.
You don't know what you want to do anyway. I saw Charlie Kirk talk about it was a pro-life speech, and
Hmm.
then they had the girls come up on the college campus and talk on the microphone. And one of the girls, 20, 21, said, "My life would be ruined if I had a kid right now. I'd have to drop out of school." And I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what should happen.
Yes. Well, and I think
Have your
wasn't
kid
yeah,
now
I
and
guess
drop
like
out
in
of
the
college."
yeah, in like the 50s they would have their goal of college was to meet a husband and have kids. Like that was like the reason why they would go to college. My grandma admits it. She was like, "Yeah, the reason why I went to college was so I could meet a husband and have kids and I get an education." But that was part of it. But yeah, your life would just be starting. Like that's the best thing that could happen to you at 21. Like you can raise a baby while you're still pretty young, and by the time they're like 18, you're still really young. Yeah.
And I know not every situation is good, and not every man is gonna,
Yeah.
do the biblical thing at that age. And
Yeah.
and I do understand that. I met my husband at that age, and we had that conversation yesterday. And I wish he would have proposed. I wish we would have gotten married at 19
Yeah.
when I met you. And he said, "You just
Yeah.
you don't have that foresight, you don't have that wherewithal." That's why I want to speak that into someone's life as, okay,
Mm.
now I'm older and this is what I wish I would have been told. And honestly, I wish someone had told me it's hard to have a baby. It's hard. You have to nurse them every 2 hours. I didn't know that. It's hard. Your body has to recover. And
Yeah. When you're 35 and you're nursing a baby all night long, you're not going to recover as much as if you were 21. That no one tells you that when you're thinking about, having a family. When I met my husband when we were actually very young. I was 14 and we did not date until I was older, but I went to college and he went to the military and we came back at the same time and started dating after that. And it all worked out, but we've had that conversation too where it's like, what if we had gotten engaged before we went to college and you went to the military? Man, our life would look so much different. But yeah, it's like hindsight's 2020.
hindsight's 2020, and we
Yeah.
have that older generation speaking it into us. Go
Yeah.
to college to find a husband. We went
Right.
to church to find a husband. Find a good godly man when you're young. And I think we've
Mhm.
just lost those voices, or they've been
Yeah.
ignored, or the narrative's changed for political reasons or for whatever other reason.
Yeah.
And
Nephilim
it's
agenda.
what is next for that based mom?
Well, only the Lord knows. But, you know, um, social media wise, always just speaking my truth and whatever the Holy Spirit has put on me to share. So whether that's vaccine liability or the new administration's, trajectory for food, sharing our experience with autism and how it has impacted our life. And just my my conviction is to continue to be as honest as possible, but in grace and out of love, and hoping that I can just, if I reach one mom who is on the fence about, you know, vaccinating her children or choosing to buy that box of granola bars from the store, whatever, like if I can empower one person to make a different decision, that I've done my job. Like I've done that. And so just continuing to share that and hopefully educating people and then growing my bakery and blessing my community with our fresh and milled flour baked goods. And um, I like to share about like non-toxic living and how that can impact your life and how easy it is. It's so easy. It's just as easy as buying Clorox from the store. So just empowering people as much as I can in my day-to-day life.
I just read somewhere that cleaning, having your children around household products is more dangerous than having them around secondhand smoke?
Yep. And fragrance, yeah, like perfumes and those plugins, which I had those all. Believe me, in the last like it's been 7 years or so that I've really buckled down and gotten rid of all that stuff. But yeah, it is. It's so bad. They're so toxic and they're carcinogens and um I know it's hard to give up. Like it comes down to like the worldly, the flesh. Do I care more about my house smelling like flowers? I actually made a reel that says, ladies, if you want your house to smell like baked goods, don't burn a candle, just bake some
Like,
goods.
that's so
Right.
good.
There's no better smell than freshly baked cookies. So don't burn a candle, just make some cookies. So, how letting go of the worldly of the flesh and just how can we return back to the basics? How can we just live? I don't want to live like my maybe 250 years ago, but how can I live closer to that in my day-to-day life?
Absolutely. And where
Yeah.
can people find you?
Instagram, that's my only platform. So that base mom. And I don't know. We'll see what the next few things hold for me, but I'm not interested in TikTok. I don't know about YouTube, maybe. And then, so just focusing my time on Instagram right now.
Kelsey, this conversation has been incredible. Thank you for being here and for sharing your wisdom and encouragement with everybody listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow Kelsey at That Based Mom for more of her insights on faith, family, and living out your truth. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a mom who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay strong, stay in the faith, and keep fighting the good fight. Thank you, Kelsey.